Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough. Your grace is enough for me. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, and I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, I want to see you. I want to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart, I want to see you. I want to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Speak, Lord, I love to listen to your voice. See, Lord, here I am. My heart is silent, Lord, my soul is still, waiting upon your voice. Tell me your will. Empty, I place myself before your face. Touch me now in the silence of faith. Speak, Lord, I love to listen to your voice. See, Lord, here I am. Your word is life, oh Lord, through all my days. Like a radiant light, guiding my way. Your love stands firm, oh Lord, strong as a rock. It endures through the night and the storm. Speak, Lord, I love to listen to your voice. See, Lord, here I set my soul afire, oh Lord. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirit every my life a witness of your power. Fill me with your spirit every hour. Set my soul afire. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Set my soul afire, oh Lord. Make my life a
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Glad you could be with us. On my right is Jerry Clark. Marty's not well. He's not doing too well these days and very, very sick. And so, Marty, if you happen to be watching us, hope you get well soon. We're really worried about you, thinking about you, and we want you to get back soon and be with us again. And Steve, of course, is over on my left, or else you wouldn't be looking at us if it wasn't for Steve over there. So thank you for joining us, everybody. Glad to be with you. Tonight, as we talk about this remarkable book by Henri Nouwen called The Return of the Prodigal Son. Let me begin with a prayer, and then I'm going to read the text of the prayer, and then I'll turn everything over to Jerry, and we'll kind of go from there. All right. And then, okay, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, bless us as we ponder this book, this very important book, The Return of the Prodigal Son. A story of homecoming, but whether we find ourselves to be the prodigal son or, in many of our cases, the elder son, who many of us think kind of got a raw deal in all of this, may we come to understand the mystery of what Jesus was trying to teach us by sharing this parable with us, and most especially his image of the Father and his love for all of us. So bless us tonight as we ponder these really important images and ideas, and as we go through this wonderful book. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. So, folks, it's chapter 15 of Luke. There are three different parables in a row. The one that's the most famous one is this one we're going to share and talk about here tonight, the return of the prodigal son. And it begins with the Pharisees, and they're kind of upset with Jesus. And it says, the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So he addressed them in these parables. And we'll read the third one. Then he said, a man had two sons, and the younger son said to the father, Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me. So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings, set off for a distant country where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens who sent him to his farm to tend the pigs. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the pigs fed, but nobody gave him anything. Coming to his senses, he thought, how many of my father's hard workers have more than enough to eat? But here I am dying of hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired workers. So he got up and went off to his father. When he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. But his father ordered his servants, quickly bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fatted calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because my son, this son of mine, has been dead and has come back to life again. He was lost and has been found." Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called to one of the servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, "Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound." He became angry. And when he refused to enter the house, his father came out to plead with him. He said to his father in reply, "Look, all these years I've served you, and not once did I obey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when this son of yours returns, who swallows up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fatted calf?" He said to him, "My son, you're here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come back to life again. He was lost, and now he is found." So there's the story. There's the beautiful parable, one of the part that was beautiful that Jesus shares with all of us.
Now that's unique to Luke. You only find that in Luke?
That is unique to Luke. That is nowhere else.
None of the synoptic gospels.
So here's Jesus telling us what the Father is like.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, now and in the opening statement, in the book's prologue, he refers to encounter with Rembrandt's painting of the prodigal son as starting him on a spiritual journey.
Right. And he kind of encounters this. I don't know if many of you have read the book. Here's the book, Return of the Prodigal Son. I have a couple copies of this, and this is the one we're reading. Not a very intense or dense book at all. Anyway, so he had come to this large community which deals with these are people that actually live in this community with many mentally handicapped people. And so he goes there, and we're going to talk about how he got there in a little bit, but he goes there and he's talking to this lady when he first arrives, and he sees a poster of this picture that grabs his attention to such a degree that he's so distracted by all of that he can't even continue the conversation anymore. And he finally says, "Where did you get that picture? Where did you get that thing?" Yeah. So that's sort of where the whole thing begins to start for all of us. This friend's office, and a poster in that office.
I found it amazing that you can be struck like that by something you see,
Yes.
Think that deeply about something that you just see and how it sends him on this incredible journey. Here's a parable, a picture depicting a journey of sorts in the first century, this young man going off, and then it sends Nouwen on it, in the 20th.
This journey too, yes.
The 19th century, off into his journey.
Yeah.
20th century.
So there's a quote about that in the book on page 4, and he says, "But after it was all over, I felt, I'm sorry, I felt like, here's a reason I think why he was so attracted to the picture. First of all, he was attracted to the picture because of the prodigal son himself, who, and I don't know if you're able to bring the picture up, the prodigal son, for just a moment. And the part that struck Nouwen first about the picture, then other things kind of came into play later on, but the thing that struck him first about the picture was this prodigal son, the one who's kneeling down in front of his father, and he looks so very, very safe. And that's the thing I think at first struck him. And there it is. And his head is sort of buried in his father's chest. His hands are there. So he saw him as safe. And in page 4 of the book, he writes, but after, he writes about going to Central and South America, all the violence, all the wars. He says, I was dead tired. so much so that I could barely walk. I was anxious, lonely, restless, and very needy. During the trip, I had felt like a strong fighter for justice and peace, but now able to face the dark world without fear. But after it was all over, I felt like a vulnerable little child who wanted to crawl into his mother's lap and cry. As soon as the cheering and the cursing crowds were gone, I experienced a devastating loneliness and could easily have surrendered myself to seductive voices that promised emotional and physical rest. So he was so struck by this father and his embrace, and how safe that son who had been through so much must have felt when he finally had his father's touch and this feeling of safety. I think that's what grasped him first,
Right.
in the picture.
Yeah. So it was a particular image.
Yeah,
Picture.
he really got a strong echo.
Were you ever struck that way by something?
Yeah,
artwork?
I have it right here.
Yeah.
You want me to go? You wanted you to go first. And
Okay.
let
Let's let
Steve
Steve
go.
go.
We
Yeah.
all kind of picked out a piece of art
Yeah.
that kind of struck us. And so Steve,
Yeah.
Jerry's gonna
In
go
my
first.
early born again days, if we,
Okay, sure.
that's another way to put it. In my last year of college, this painting really struck me. It's called "The Way to Emmaus," and it's an example of a painting that I saw. And as soon as I saw it, I was just moved by a particular aspect of the painting. It wasn't the trees, the beautiful sky. If you see the fella on the right,
The far right.
far right,
Okay.
I don't know, you can't see real well, but he's so intrigued.
you can tell.
He's
You can
excited.
tell,
He's so into it, and that really struck me because I was so into like this real new discovery I had of Jesus, and that painting just it really
So the
struck
guy
me.
on the right, if it will be, if in the prodigal son it was the young man in feeling a sense of safety, you felt like this man on the right was just so riveted with Jesus saying.
Yeah, we have the scripture verse that's stuck in my head that goes along with this. After Jesus reveals himself and then disappears, he says, "Were our hearts not burning within us while he was speaking?" And so that just gave me the chills looking at that and relating it to that verse.
Awesome, awesome. All right, Steve.
Steve's got a favorite.
Yep.
Yeah, mine is the light of the world, based on Revelation 3:20, and I can read it quickly. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come to him, and I will sup with him, and he with me. And I just think it's, God so wants a relationship with us, and we just have to open the door. That's all we have to do.
Awesome, right? Yeah, yeah. Oh, here's the one I have. I'll get up here and get it in a minute here.
All right. And there's on Steve's painting too, the thing that people talk about a lot is someone said, well, you didn't paint a doorknob on the door. And he said, the doorknob's on the inside.
Yep. Yeah.
We have to let him in.
We have to let him in.
He's not going to open the door.
I'll take this.
There you go. It's good.
Now, this has been in my prayer space over in the house since I've been here, and I get an echo on this every time. This is what I pray with. It's called Virgin of the Spirit, and you can notice that Jesus, who she's holding, is sending the Spirit to her. And you can't see it real well here. These guys can see it here, but you guys can't. Her hand is exaggeratingly open. It's like I can't put my hand in that kind of a posture that her hand is, how open it is. And so the things that strike me the most are the hand here, and then her eyes just sort of like staring straight into me. And so this would be a piece of art, I think, that I kind of have this echo with in my own life in a way. So I have that in my space there. I always get this.
Yeah, and leave it there. Would be the only thing between us. Back to what you talked about too, as far as he had gone through all of these events and everything.
Right.
Haven't you? I know I have. You've been through a lot of things. There was a lot of preparation and took a lot of time. Probably like Easter week. When it's all over, don't you kind of feel like you wanted to cry.
Yeah.
draining.
I do know what that feels like a little bit. I wanted to cry. And, remember when Rolheiser in his book said, we want to try to keep the even pace, that if we get too high, we're going to get too low.
Yeah.
If we get too low, we're going to get, we're going to get too high. And I wonder of the Philadelphia Eagles, that they won the Super Bowl, if they got so high, then maybe 2 days later they're wondering, well, what just happened? And all this
right.
too. And I think this is quite profound. And when I thought of this, and you asked about this, I don't know what you guys think. I don't want to. I never forget this person saying this to me. And this woman has had sex with a lot of people in her life. And she said to me, all of this, I think it's this great search. And so she said that every time that she has had this experience, when it was all over, she would cry. And the reason why she said she would cry is because it never really kind of met everything she wanted it to be. It's almost like in this world, there isn't anything that's ever going to fully satisfy us in a way. And she's looking and looking and looking, and this is her way of looking in many ways. But those tears kind of, and it struck me whenever she said that. So there's something like that too. I say it that way.
Yeah. So he was really very busy and not that fulfilled, actually.
Yeah, very, very busy in many ways. He's a university professor in some of the more prestigious universities in the world. And then he goes to South and Central America, writes a book about all that, of course. But the thing is, I think, like you did, and I think Steve did, and I guess I try to do with my statue in a certain way, especially as you on the road to Emmaus, you're in the picture.
Yeah,
you're there.
Can relate.
You're that guy on the right side,
right?
And that's beautiful. I think you're that guy on the right side. And so Henri Nouwen saw himself originally. We're going to get into more about all this. Originally, as that prodigal son, that was who he saw himself as.
And that's the next thing that I noticed I wanted to talk about was he placed himself in the son. I think he was like, well, I was longing to be in my father's embrace like that. But I didn't get the impression that he felt that he was a prodigal son in the sense of doing everything this son did.
Not
he just longed for that safeness from the emptiness that he felt.
And from what I gather from other books, even though I'm going to share some of the backstory here in a little bit, remember from his other books, he did not have a good relationship with his father. He was always trying to measure up to his dad, and he never felt like he quite made it.
Yeah, see, that's not in Nouwen's book. He doesn't say that.
Not in this book.
So
here.
that's important.
And also, too, in one sense, Nouwen never got his PhD. He got close to it. I think he wrote his dissertation for the whole thing, too. But somewhere on the way, he failed something in that process and never made it, got his PhD. And I think that always was something that made him less safe. He never arrived at that in his life.
Yeah. That's significant.
Yeah, that's not in the book either. Anyway, I don't think.
Well, I think not getting your father's, you did a good job, or I'm happy with what you did.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a story. I don't want to take up too much time, but in that, what I was saying, my father's father, no matter how good he did, he would never get his father's praise.
This is your Follow Your Faith class with Michelle Varner called My Father's Father.
Yeah, and there was a moment when his dad wanted him to get in the truck, and Jesus was sitting there on the seat, and he couldn't see him, and he's like, look at me, don't look at, I am happy with you. I'm happy with what you did. And, when you...
there's something in psychology called the father wound.
Yeah.
There's so many men running around trying to please their father in some fashion.
I forget, was it Rolheiser? Might have been Rohr, but said that like working in prison ministry, almost like 99% of the guys in prison just don't have a father, no relationship with their father, or hate their father. Yeah. It's so fathers love your kids.
Yeah, and that's a big issue, and we always try to talk about that, about the fathers caring for the kids, but he always struggled with that, not measuring up to his dad in some way.
This the story progresses. It seems like he has this obsession of sorts with the painting. To me, it seems like a spiritual, a good kind of possession. Like it took hold of him. Does that make sense?
Now, a little bit another self-disclosure about Henri Nouwen. He had a little bit of OCD. Yeah, and so I think certain things he would latch on to. But I agree with you. I don't think this is OCD or anything like that. I think this is something that was very deep for him.
Right.
Very, very important. And so he did when you go all the way to Russia, I don't know what would take me to Russia. I don't know what that would be to take me to Russia. But he goes all the way to Russia, to the Hermitage, to be able to see this painting. It's like, wow, that's pretty
So
big.
you're going to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
what
we
he
can
did?
do that. Yeah, we can talk about that. He does go there. Let me share again a quote from the book about all that, and how this kind of. What I want to share with you is when he finally got there, and how he got there is another part of the story. But when he finally got there, this is his experience. Now, the painting is 8 feet high and 6 feet wide. That's pretty big,
Is that our copy? We have that around here somewhere. We have one that large because we had it in church for a long time. Do we own that? Is our poster that
I don't
big?
know that we owned that or not. We did have that, didn't we?
Yeah, we had it for a long time.
That's the one that Norman used.
Yeah, Norm used it in a presentation, and we had it in here in Holy Ground somewhere. That's
It would have
right.
been nice to have it for.
What did we do?
Yeah, get it standing back here. I don't know,
Did I get that?
be
Well,
down in the
I don't know
basement.
what that is. I totally
Well, we
forgot
have a
about
few
that.
more weeks. We could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll put it over in church
Yeah.
for the rest of the time. Okay, here's what he says. And so there I was, facing the painting that had been on my mind or in my heart for 3 years. I was stunned by its majestic beauty, its size, larger than life, its abundant reds, browns, and yellows, its shadowy recesses and bright foreground. But most of all, the light enveloped embrace of father and son. There he goes again. It's zooming in on that father and son, surrounded by 4 mysterious bystanders, which you will eventually get to who they all are. Not today, but we'll get to those guys. All of this gripped me with an intensity far beyond my anticipation. There had been moments in which I had wondered whether the real painting might disappoint me. The opposite was true. Its grandeur and splendor made everything recede into the background and held me completely captive. Coming here was indeed a homecoming. While many tourist groups with their guides came and left in the rapid succession, I sat on one of the red velvet chairs in front of the painting and just looked. Now I was seeing the real thing. Not only the father's embracing his child come home, but also the elder son and the other 3 figures. It was a huge work of oil on canvas, 8 feet high and 6 feet wide, and kind of goes on to talk about it from there. So imagine that, 8 feet by 6 feet.
Yeah, that's big.
That's big. All those figures would be life size.
Yeah, pretty much.
And do you see, by the way, folks, if you look real closely, if you could see all this real closely, look in the back. There's a woman back there. And I don't know the one who's right behind the father. I think that's
a
man.
woman too, because he said there's 2 women and 2 men.
Okay. And there's the 2 men right there. So that, of course, one of them is the elder son. And what he has theories about who all they all are, but there's that woman back there.
On the left, you're referring to. She's very faint.
Yeah.
Yes,
In fact, in the book,
yes.
cover of the book, you can't even see her.
Right.
You have to have a good.
She's
exposure.
not on the cover of the book.
No, it's just too dark.
Linda said it might. She thinks it's in the basement here of Holy
Holy
Grounds.
Grounds, yeah. So to look.
I'll have to.
Basement of Holy Grounds.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll look. Okay.
And Sherry says it's good to have friends in the right places to see Rembrandt. But he actually he didn't have to just go around with the people that had to move through like cattle through the
Right,
museum.
right.
He had someone actually get him a chair and let him sit for like 2 hours.
I never forget. I was when we were at Ephesus, and we were, which is probably where Mary lived, with John in Ephesus, and we got moved in and out of there so fast. I was so disappointed.
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
way for that one thing.
Yeah, right.
And anyway, but
Yeah.
so there's his experience sitting there in St. Petersburg before the Rembrandt actual painting with all that. So yes.
So then now and then is moving, because he was getting ready to move into this new position, right? He was already decided. He's moving from a life in academia, working with university students, writing, lecturing on systematic theology, etc. He's going to do that to work with the mentally handicapped.
L'Arche is very strong throughout Europe, mostly in France, and here now in Canada. I believe this is in Canada that the L'Arche community
He went up to,
I think it's Toronto and
Toronto,
I might be
yes,
wrong,
yeah.
But the biggest thing we want to share here is Nouwen's journey through academia. He was a professor look how restless he is, Notre Dame. He was at Yale. He's at Harvard, and he's writing constantly. In the beginning of the book here, I was looking how many books they mentioned, and this is not all the books he wrote. 19, including this one, 20. And these are not 30 books that he wrote. And so he's well known. He's famous. He's going into academia, and then he runs down to South and Central America in his wrestling. In other words, he also spent some time in the Trappist monastery at Genesee, wrote a book called A Genesee Diary. He was there too. So this guy was everywhere, trying to find himself in some fashion. So I want you to picture this very, very bright, this very, very charismatic individual. Notre Dame, Yale, Harvard, Genesee for a while, down to South America and Central America, looking all over the place. This genius of a guy, and all of a sudden he walks into this woman's office and sees this painting, and bam, he's just stuck by she's a poster, excuse me. He's just struck by it and can't take his eyes off it. Here it is 3 years later. He's in St. Petersburg in Russia, and he's looking at it.
Yep.
And looking at it for hours upon hours.
Right.
With all that. So there's the story I think we have so far with that.
So the backstory, though, is this what you want to talk about?
Yeah.
What he's actually going through, or do we want to discuss the bystanders in the photo?
I think this is important. He calls himself in all this, he says he realized he's always been an observer, a bystander, never risking being guided by God into the unknown. Now, this is very common in people of my world, not so much common in my world, because there's priests that are so few, and I didn't grow up, if I was a clergy person of 40, 50 years ago in cultural Catholicism, with 3 or 4 guys over there in the rectory together, I'd be living a completely different life, be completely sheltered life in many different ways, just living with these men and maybe a housekeeper over there. And in a way, a priest or a monk can simply be a bystander or an observer in life. So here's what he's saying that he was. He was this academic. He's a priest, very academic, very avant-garde, doing all these different things. He's on the cutting edge of everything, and he sees himself as just an observer. Now, he gets there to the L'Arche community, and let me share with you another quote, if I may, that might help us. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the background here with all this. He says, certainly there were hours of prayer, many days and months of retreat, Genesee for one of them, countless conversations with spiritual directors, but I had never fully given up the role of bystander, even though there had been in me a long time desire to be an insider looking out. I never kept choosing over and over again against the position of the outsider looking in. Sometimes this looking in was a curious looking in, sometimes a jealous looking in, sometimes an anxious looking in, once in a while even a loving looking in. But giving up the somewhat safe position of the critical observer seemed like a great leap into the totally unknown territory. Now, having said that, he goes to L'Arche. Now, here's a community that is very much an insider kind of place. And he has a relationship with somebody else. He sees himself. Now, this is true of could be people like me in my world. We never get close to anybody. We're always, we kind of live off of being father, whatever your name is or something, And so we never get close. Well, anyway, he starts to get close to this person. And in his neediness, he gets closer and closer to this person, and this person starts feeling suffocated and runs for cover. And he is left in the lurch and has a breakdown of sorts. Now, what I'm going to quote from is Nouwen's spiritual journal, whenever he went away for 6 months to recover from this trauma that happened in his life. And so this was published 5 or 6 years later. And because he was afraid to publish it. He didn't want everybody to read all the stuff that he wrote about. I'm sure it's edited in a certain way. Let me share some from the introduction of this book. The anguish completely paralyzed me. I could no longer sleep. I cried uncontrollably for hours. I could not be reached by consoling words or arguments. I no longer had any interest in any other people's problems. I lost my appetite for food and could not appreciate the beauty of music, art, or even nature. All of this was triggered by a sudden interruption in a friendship. Kind of goes into that a little bit, which I didn't want to share all that with you. During the 6 months that followed, I lived the trauma that he talked about, the trauma that happened. During the 6 months that followed, I lived through an agony that seemed never to end. But the 2 guides who were given to me did not leave me alone or kept gently moving me from one day to the next, holding on to me as parents holding a wounded child. When I returned to my community, not without great apprehension, I reread all that I had written during the time in my exile. That's what this book is here. It seemed so intense and so raw that I could hardly imagine it would speak to anybody but me. Even though Bill Berry, a friend and a publisher in Doubleday, felt strongly that my most personal struggle could be of great help to many people, I was too close to it to give it away. Instead, I started to work on a book from Rembrandt's painting, The Return of the Prodigal Son, and found there a safe place for some of the insights I had gained through my struggles. So there's a little of the backstory.
So writing this helped him work his way out of this?
I would say, yeah. Or make sense of it in some fashion. What do you guys think? What do you think about that?
Well, Sherry said, all the experiences he's had, maybe he was physically, emotionally, and spiritually drained.
Yeah. Regardless of intelligence, a seeking, restless heart. Yeah, in many ways. So you kind of get the idea here, folks, that these great spiritual writers, and Thomas Merton had his moments too, that I'd read a lot, had his moments too. And so, I mean,
you really have to suffer and live it to experience God's love. There's a line in here, I can't pull it out, where he actually kind of says that in the book about the love of the Father. He said that the half-blind man, he must have seen and suffered and lost a great deal to be able to give that kind of love. So to recognize that we have to lose a lot.
There is a sense, which you have it down here, there is a sense in which if you're not doing some real suffering in your life in a lot of ways, you have no depth. So we always see suffering as the great evil. Now we're a little bit off the subject here with all this, but I'm not sure suffering is the great evil all the time. Now, of course, we want to mitigate suffering whenever we possibly can. We're not, masochists in some way, just let that pain. But in all of our lives, there's a certain suffering that comes, and that gives us a certain depth in life that we would not have otherwise. Had suffered with all that. So
absolutely,
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yes.
Yeah. So we get into next chapter. It's the younger son, the elder son, and the father. This really is a story of about 3 people.
Yes, very much so.
And he very much saw this. Nouwen very much saw this as the 3 phases of his spiritual journey. relating to each one of these pieces. The first one, even after spending so many years involved, as we said, involved in noble causes, serving as a priest, Nouwen felt empty and related more to the young wayward son. And again, I would say more on the needing side than what the one wayward son did.
That would be his first impression of it, that he was like that wayward son, and that safety that he felt in his father's arms in that way. Universities, South America, Central America, he's feeling really, really lost. So he goes to L'Arche, and by the way, he died there. That's where he died, in L'Arche. That was his last stop in all this running around he was doing. And that was the last stop. But yeah, the first phase of this for him, for Nouwen, was the prodigal son. That was the first phase. Yes.
I think this is a good lesson in why we should, when we come across a piece of art or something, we don't just go, oh, that's interesting. It's a woman holding a baby, or it's three guys walking down the path. If you could really, I remember when Norm Ed gave his talk on this, he always says, spend time with it. A piece of art, spend time, which Nouwen did. He spent hours.
Yes. Yes.
And, but between that, even though looking at it as long as he did, it took some more life experiences that we're going to talk about to make him see something in the painting he didn't see before, or in himself, right?
Right. Yes, I think so. Yes.
And this was the second part, and this was a real earth-shaking thing for him when he was confiding in a friend, Bart Gavigan. Bart suggested that he might be more like the second son. Talk about that. That was a landmark in his life.
I really think this is really important, because this is, in fact, his life. He was very much, and I think a lot of us are too.
Yes, I think we're more the second son. Those of us who were good boys and girls growing up.
Inner peace, everything else. Yeah. Right? So I think there's a lot of people maybe watching us right now who see the older son is getting shafted in this whole story. This is unfair. This isn't right for this guy, because I think we've been taught by our church to be like the older son.
Yeah.
And it is so wrong that we have done that. And I think when you begin to get what the problem the older son had, which, by the way, according to the parable, according to Jesus, I would say, is not better off than the younger son. Not at all.
No, I think
he's got problems that are just as deep.
When you read the line before that about his encounter with the Pharisees,
yes,
it made me realize the elder son, that's who he's talking. The elder son are the Pharisees.
Actually, you could make the point that the elder son's the key figure in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the one.
That's what they're leading up to. Yeah, hey, I'm going to forgive all these people, but now I'm talking to you, Pharisees, elder son. This is really about you.
So listen to this quote here. This is a good one about Nouwen, and the point that this Bart Gafgen was trying to say to him. He says, and this is Nouwen speaking himself. When I was 6 years old, I already wanted to be a priest and never changed my mind. Whew. Oh, that's amazing. I was born, baptized, confirmed, ordained in the same church, had always been obedient to my parents, my teachers, my bishop, my God. I had never run away from home, never wasted my time and money on sensual pleasures, never gotten lost in debauchery or drunkenness. For my entire life, I had been quite responsible, traditional, homebound. Must have been a boring kid growing up. But with all of that, I may, in fact, have been just as lost as the younger son. That's the whole point. It's not may.
And he never got a kid goat to share with his friends either.
No,
on top of that.
Yeah. I suddenly saw myself in a completely new way. I saw my jealousy, my anger, my touchiness, my doggedness, my sullenness, and most of all, my subtle self-righteousness. Bingo. There we go. I saw how much of a complainer I was, and how much of my thinking and feeling was riddled with resentment. For a time, it became impossible to see how I could ever have thought of myself as the younger son. I was the elder one for sure, but just as lost as his younger brother, even though I had stayed home all my life. I had been working very hard on my father's farm, but I don't know if he really worked on a farm, but had never fully tasted the joy of being at home. That's the thing about the elder son. Never fully tasted the joy of being at home. Instead of being grateful for the privileges I received, I had become a very resentful person, jealous of my younger brother, sisters who had taken so many risks and were so warmly welcomed back. During my first year and a half at Daybreak, Bart's insightful remark continued to guide my inner journey. So there it is. He's admitting the second stage of Nouwen is this. He is the elder son. Now, folks, how did you resonate with all that? Did you identify with this elder son at all? Anybody have any comments?
Sherry says, yes, I always identify with the elder son.
Okay. Okay. An honest woman amongst us here. I love the recurring thing I'm saying.
Sherry, you're an honest woman.
Yes, an honest woman. So that I think that is kind of key. Now, you asked the question next.
Well, about when we kind of covered this, aren't most of the good boys and girls most likely to fall into the elder brother's attitude?
Yeah, and the thing is, I think what can happen also too, we also begin to become very resentful. I think in the Bible, whenever they were taught, which parable is it where the ones who went out in the field got the just daily wage,
Right.
and then the owner kept on going out over and over and over again, and he goes out at 5:00, and they work for 1 hour and they get the just daily wage too.
Right.
It's a parable about the Jews who felt like they've been at this for centuries. All of a sudden, these Gentiles come in and get the same thing.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
There's an elder son type thing
Right,
there
yeah.
too, with all that.
Yeah.
But there's a book that I have recommended to many a woman called The Drama of the Gifted Child. Now, the gifted child, in Alice Miller's understanding, a Jungian analyst, is that it's the woman, the girl, like women are, we men have our problems too, as you well know. Men are shamed into being men.
Yeah.
Our dads used to shame us into that in many ways.
Yeah, man.
But women are supposed to be pretty. They're supposed to be nice. They're supposed to be, bubbly and everything else. And so they go around, I'm supposed to help everybody. I'm supposed to be nice, help everybody. But after a while, they get resentful because, I get tired of doing all this.
Yeah,
all the
right.
time. So she calls it the drama of the gifted child. And it's this elder son phenomena, elder daughter phenomena of just getting bitter and angry at being that person, and getting taken advantage of every once in a while with all that as well. Yeah. So anyway.
Not getting to be yourself.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, so as we touched on this earlier too, because at this point in the book, he says he's really now he related to the first son, and he related to the second son, and now he's starting to relate to the father. Okay. He says, one must have died many deaths and cried many tears to have painted a portrait of God in such humility.
I guess who painted the portrait?
Yeah, he's starting to realize about
Rembrandt
the father.
Too.
Yeah, Rembrandt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. As we're talking about this, I forget who we're talking about, whether it's Nouwen or Rembrandt. About certain things. Yeah. But in this case, but for Nouwen is saying that that somebody must have cried many tears and have painted a portrait of God in such humility. So now I'm starting to realize what's special about the father and what Rembrandt's trying to say about the father.
I think you're talking about Rembrandt now.
Yeah.
Because Rembrandt had a very tragic life. Right. In many ways. I think we're going to get to that eventually.
Yes, he said, when he looked at it, you looked at the father, Rembrandt must have done that. So, so then he goes on, another friend of his, and I'm seeing a theme through here, how friends in his life have really been instrumental. Yeah. And I think it's the other thing too, like looking at a good work of art, listen to what the subtle things our friends say that just seem to be a throwaway line that change your life.
It's really important for him. These friends of his are really important for him.
This next one was really life-changing.
Yeah.
Where his friend Sue Mostaller says to him, because he's struggling, he's sharing his heart with her about being the older son and also relating to the younger. She said, whether you are the younger son or the elder son, you have to realize, we all have to realize, that you are called to become the father.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, I can only say to you that that revelation as a priest comes to you in a way that is kind of frightening at a certain point.
How so?
You get ordained a priest, and so people call you father and all this other stuff, and you don't really take that seriously because you really know you're just Mark Bagley after all. But eventually, as you get older, and maybe it's when you first become a pastor, you begin to realize that the buck stops here. Just like every dad, every mom who's watching us right now knows that when it comes to your kids, the buck stops with you. You know that. Mm-hmm. You know that, Steve. You all know that. So it's like you're thinking about your kids all the time. They're always on your mind. Mm-hmm. And so you guys are always on my mind in all these different ways. And so, and you gradually slowly come to the point of where you become a father. And in many ways, you don't share your life with your kids in a fashion because you realize your life isn't that important. It's them. That's the most important thing. So you don't share like you're like buddies with them or anything like that. You care about them and their growth, and you kind of forget about yourself. Now, I'm going to quote this here that she says, Sue did not give me much of a chance to protest, and I'm sure he did in one sense. You've been looking for friends all your life, You've been craving for affection as long as I've known you. Boy, she's getting right between the eyes with this one. And he lets her, and look at, he's writing about this. He's letting her do it.
Yeah, she's shaking him by the lapels.
I mean, it's like, this guy now is incredibly honest in many ways. I had a chance one time to maybe get a chance to see him. I didn't, it was at St. Mary's in Baltimore. I think they invited us at Mount St. Mary's, and for whatever reason, I didn't take him up on it. Wish I would have, to do that. He was there, and he had brought some people from L'Arche. Mm-hmm. So this was in the early 1980s, I guess, that was all happening. So he was there. Anyway, she goes on. You've been looking for friends all your life. You've been craving for affection long as I've known you. You've been interested in thousands of things. You've been begging for attention, appreciation, affirmation, right and left. The time has come to claim your true vocation to be a father who can welcome his children home without asking any, this is beautiful, without asking any questions, without wanting anything from them in return. Look at the father in your painting, and you will know who you are and what you're called to be. We at Daybreak and most people around you don't need you to be a good friend or even a kind brother. We need you to be a father who can claim for himself the authority of true compassion. And the two lines that stick out at me, and this is the thing I think I'm learning in my old age more and more, is that a father who can welcome his children home without asking any questions, without wanting anything from them in return. You just want them to get home. You just want them to get here. And quit trying to take care of your own needs and start taking care of some other people. And then, somewhere along the way, you might get something figured out for your own self. But I think, I don't know, could you tell the story a little bit about maybe how you became a father as opposed to just Jerry or Jerry and Mary Kay, but all of a sudden you go, whoa, I'm a dad, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know a moment. I have to think about, where every stage of the child's life, and then every new child that comes in is, I guess, another revelation.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And, but to be a father, again, I'm just thinking of this as you're saying it. I guess what we're called to do is to move out of, do I relate to the son? Do I relate to the elder son, the younger son? We should go deep into ourselves and examine those things. But when the rubber meets the road, our children need us to be our father. We need you to be our pastor. We don't need you to be moping around all the time thinking about your past and all that stuff. My kids need me, and they need Mary Kay to not be living in the past with what she didn't have growing up and everything. So that's hard then.
They don't want to.
That's
They
hard.
don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
they want to, and they shouldn't.
And they shouldn't have. Yeah, right. Yeah, but it just gets in the way of us being good parents, you know, or good pastors or whatever. You
Get
know?
over yourself and let's
Yeah.
move along here. You know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and being genuine and being the example you set before them, I think is critical. You know, it's they see that more than anything. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
Don't do as I do. Do as
Yeah.
I say. Doesn't work too well.
no,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't.
No, but as I was saying, if you're dwelling on your baggage all the time, you can't be a good example.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They're going to see the example of you taking something out on somebody else all the
I
time.
can feel like garbage on a Sunday morning, but man, you're not seeing it.
Yeah.
You're not seeing it. You know, it's going to be different because that doesn't matter. That's you know, if I can stand up there, I'm going to be standing up there, and because that's being the dad I'm supposed to be. With all that.
Right. Yeah. So we don't want to hear anything about your problems.
Yeah, that's
kidding.
okay. Right. I got it.
I think we're doing a lot of sharing lately on here. I think we've both
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
especially you being vulnerable, and I think it's important to be vulnerable and let
Sure.
people know that, you know, we're real people. Even though people might think I'm absolutely amazing, but I am not.
We all do, Jerry. We all do.
We all do.
Yeah.
So Rembrandt and the younger son. Let's talk about the life of the painter Rembrandt himself, the significance, because that's really, he only gives a couple pages to his real life, but I think it's, you know, it has a lot to do with understanding who was behind and why they did the painting. What was his life like?
Just real quickly, you know, Rembrandt had 300 paintings, 2,000 sketches. He was well known during his life, and he was I think he made a lot of money during his life as a painter.
He went through a lot of money.
Many biblical scenes, 40 self-portraits,
Yeah.
40 self-portraits, and we're going to see one of them in a minute here. And
Get that one ready, Steve.
so he was married, and I think all three of the kids that he had to his wife died. Then he had two sort of.
He had two other. I guess he had something going on that was turned into be a problem with the nurse of one of the first kids after his wife died.
Right. Yeah.
Then he remarried and had at least another child, and that's the only child
Did he
that
marry
survived
her?
him.
The second
Oh, I
one?
don't know if they got married or not.
I don't know if they
It
got
just might
married
have
or
been
not, but he
her
had a child with her.
girlfriend. But yeah, they had a child, and she's the only child that survived him.
Yes. So it was a very complicated life, a very difficult life. At one point, he was very, very poor, and even though he had made a lot of money, and so here Nouwen talks about what's the title of this picture again?
Oh, it's actually entitled
Prodigal
the
Son.
Prodigal Son in a Brothel.
Yeah. So
And it's kind of curious. Steve's getting it up here in a second. And but he actually has a picture of it in the book, and he doesn't say what the title of the painting is, but that's Rembrandt. It's a self-portrait of Rembrandt, and that's his wife. This image of his wife,
first wife,
his
yes.
first wife,
Yeah.
and but the scene is they're in a brothel. Okay, he's just this young man in a brothel.
he's
Yeah,
kind of
I-
grabbing for all the gusto.
I think the title is "The Prodigal Son in the Tavern."
The tab.
Well, see,
Well, see,
I've
there's
heard,
brothel here.
I've heard, I saw two titles about that. I don't know where I got the brothel thing, Steve.
It says at
But
the age of 30, he painted himself with his wife and as a lost son in a brothel.
But I found it interesting. He doesn't mention the painting's name in the book. And as I was looking for the painting today, that the word that I did see somewhere, it was someone called it in a brothel. But the key was prodigal son. So I'm wondering, even at his young age, in all his struggles, in the back of his mind, he's feeling like a prodigal son. He knows that what he's doing isn't spiritually healthy.
Right.
That's the impression I got.
I would kind of get that toward the end, I think this was, I think, one of his last paintings, if I understand correctly. The Return of the Prodigal Son was one of his last
Yeah.
that he ever did. And so there's one of the more, but again, one of his self-portraits is all that as well. So anyway, Rembrandt, he had his struggles in many ways too. And a lot of these great people have such struggles with all of this. So yeah, the Prodigal Son in the Brothel would be that. Yeah.
Actually, the only other thing I had was reading this second
You
paragraph.
have this underlined the same way I did.
Yeah, you want to read
Yeah,
that? Or
sure.
you,
I got it here. Second paragraph, page 33. And we can kind of bring this to a little bit of a close and see if there's any questions you guys have. He writes, as I look at the prodigal son kneeling before his father and pressing his face against his chest, I cannot but see there the once so confident and venerated artist who had come to a painful realization of that all the glory he had gathered for himself proved to be vainglory. He was a very famous painter in his own lifetime. Instead of the rich garments with which the youthful Rembrandt painted himself in the brothel, as you just saw, he now wears only a torn undertunic covering his emaciated body, and the sandals in which he had walked so far had become worn out and useless. So I think the reason why Nouwen shared that prodigal son in a brothel or a tavern, and as opposed to, and then at the end of his life, the return of the prodigal son, here is a more honest look. And here's, I think is important about all this. You know, I'm 73. You're like, what, 29? You know,
I'll be 30 next month.
30 next month. And at the old and tender age of 73, you just can't see yourself as some Superman anymore. You just can't. You know, you just sort of continue on the journey. And whenever, you know, I've often said it, and maybe this is a little bit back to the tears you were talking about before. When all this is over and I retire one day and physically kind of can't do it anymore, I think I can go to some corner and cry myself. Yeah. It's kind of like that. You just sort of go through all this, and you're not the flamboyant guy holding up a Super Bowl trophy. You're that prodigal son, kind of like, you know,
The dream of saving the world is kind of
And what
changed.
did a T.S. Eliot once said? This is something I just read recently. You begin life, and you kind of go in this big circle, and come back to your life again, a completely different person. You're completely changed from what you were before. You just come back again to the same place, a completely different person.
To make an end is to make a beginning.
Yeah.
And we return to the place where we started and know that place for the first time. I think that's the
quote.
last
Yes,
line.
yes.
I don't know.
Know the place for the first time.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just Mark Bagley, and you're just doing your stuff as best you can, trying to get it together, trying to get close to this relationship with this God of ours, and come back to the original spot and knowing the place for the first. That's exactly the quote. Thank you.
Yeah. I read that in a dog book.
A who book?
A dog book. Actually, Dave Wilson gave me a dog. It's called The Art of Raising Your Puppy, but it was written by the monks at New Skeet. Are you familiar with them up in upstate New York?
Yeah, heard of them.
Yeah. No, they support their the monastery by breeding, raising, and training German shepherds and other dogs. Anyway, but
Hey, Susie Brett, I think the father is being completely fair. What do you mean by that?
I'm not down that far.
Yeah, what do you mean by that, Susie? I'm just curious. That's a pretty interesting
It
comment.
was being fair.
I don't know.
She's typing on her iPad, so she may be having a little
Okay,
trouble
all right.
there.
We have 1 minute here, so
Yeah, what it is about the father said everything I have is yours to the older son. What the significance of that is.
yeah. Well, anyway, while Susie's typing away, what we'll do is in the next chapter, and we'll begin our next section will be all about the younger son, and I think chapter 2 and chapter 3 is all about the younger son, and I think that's what we'll be doing for the next time we get together.
Right.
And
There's a
really
lot
appreciate
to
you joining
unpack
us,
here.
folks.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there's a lot. Why didn't my comment appear? I don't know. I don't know.
We can see the ones that come through, unfortunately.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
that?
We can only see the ones that
Yeah,
come
we're
through.
gonna see the ones that come
Yeah,
through. I don't know
come
what
through. I
happened.
don't know.
Yeah.
She's welcome to type it again.
Yeah.
Oh my!
Yeah,
thank
you.
you. Give Marty our best. We sure will. And so we'll be back next week with everything.
Marty did text us during this, said he's at least home, but he
Oh.
can't work for a while, and he should be back next week.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Well, hopefully Marty
Good.
will be able to be okay.
right.
As long as he's
Take
not
it easy.
contagious.
Yeah.
So, so
Wearing a
Susie-
mask anyway.
Susie, Brett, we're probably going to not get your stuff because we're also in a little bit of a delay here with all this too. Oh, that's Betty.
That's
Sherman.
Betty.
Okay. Traveling Mercy's on my way home.
Well, I think she just wants us to be safe on our way home.
He just has to walk across the driveway. Steve and I have to risk
I
our
didn't get it.
lives.
I didn't get it. I just didn't walk across the street.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, so.
If it's too bad, we'll just stay at your place.
All right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back at it again next week. And I'm looking forward to it. Thanks very much, Jerry. Thanks,
Thanks.
Steve. Goodbye now.
Say goodbye.
Thank you. Be safe.